404, this is 7, stand by a minute. Just come on, what is your attack angle?
Okay, talk to him, see what that did. Charlie Horse, San Diego.
24, traffic 275.
85 just made a pass in there. Can you give us any?
Go to 21, 77.
Standing by over.
Okay, I'll put it a little closer than those trees. Let me come around with a loud 3 and I'll put it on those trees there.
Lee Mazzarella.
And Lee, now you go by Mazz, correct?
Yes, if you ask people in the Air Force who Lee Mazzarella, they wouldn't. If you said, "Hey, I know Mazz," they would say they would know who I was.
I gotcha. And what year did you fly Skyraiders, and what unit were you with?
I was with the 1st Special Operations Squadron, and it was 1972, early February through about November of 72 at Non-Confinam, which is known as NKP.
Or Naked Fanny, correct?
Naked Fanny.
So, can you tell me about a mission or an experience in the A-1 that's memorable to you? Something, it could be anything.
Yes, I guess I've got several, but I'll give you this one. I was leading a flight. Just there's 2 of us, had a wingman. We went south to a place called Kilometer 21. There was a road from Cambodia through Laos into Thailand, and these fellas were at Kilometer 21 kilometers from Thailand, and it was a triangle-shaped base with a little hill in the middle, and we got news that they wanted some ordnance. We arrived overhead, and around this triangle, they would clear all the brush about 50 meters so that they had a clear field of fire. And they said, we know they're out there, and they're in the trees 50 meters away, and they're probably going to come in tonight, and we sure could use some ordnance. And that was probably one of the few times that you actually had troops in contact like that. Previous to this, we were told, don't drop within 200 meters because we don't want to have friendlies accidentally killed. But the A-1 was very good about dropping ordnance. So we dropped from a low altitude and very, very close in. And I said, Roger, I don't see the enemy, but I see the tree lines. I'll drop in the tree lines. I said, Roger that. I said, I'm up. And as I pulled up and was about to roll in, they said, negative, negative, hold off. How close are you cleared to fire? And I said, well, how close are they? They said, well, about 50 meters. I said, well, that's how close I'm cleared to fire. Now, do you want this ordnance or not? They went, let her go. And that was one of the few times that I was really had troops in contact. Most of the time, you would have a fact that says, well, we have a suspected truck park, we've got a suspected supply depot, we've got something, but you couldn't see it through the trees because the trees were very high and it was dense forest.
And you were looking for, when you bombed, in situations like that, secondary explosions, correct?
Yes, yes. If you got a secondary, you meant you hit something. But in all earnest, I flew F-4s in the back seat for 100 missions over North Vietnam. And now when we went to North Vietnam, we went to a railroad yard, or if we went to the Doomer Bridge, or if we went to attack a SAM site, you could see that. That was in the open. But when you had a mission in Laos, which is where I usually flew, it'd just be a bunch of green trees. And, you got the bend in the river? Right, go 200 meters north. What's 200 meters? Okay, 200. Okay, good. Now go 200 meters to the east. Okay, put a bomb in there. Oh, that looks good. Why don't you go ahead and hit that spot? But that was it.
Did you ever work any Sandy missions?
Yes, I had several Sandy missions. I only had 2 as a flight lead.
Can you tell me about those, or one of those?
Well, the flight leads were kind of, unfortunately, both times they could not contact the survivor. So they wouldn't. One of them was to North Vietnam. We went to the Black River, orbited at the Black River, and they couldn't make contact with the survivors. So they didn't send us in. The interesting thing about that was, luckily I had memorized, because this was my second tour, and I had memorized the delta points in Laos, and I knew the headings, and I knew the distances to each one. When I pulled my little briefcase out, I had maps of South Vietnam. So by memory, I flew all the way to North Vietnam, orbited, and then flew home. And I remember my wingman saying, where the hell were we? I said, well, let me show you my maps. And he goes, but these are maps of South Vietnam. I said, yeah, you better memorize the maps of North Vietnam just in case this happens.
So not a lot of people know what delta points are. Can you go into that a little bit and help us? As
a matter of fact, they were the same delta points that we had when I flew F-4s 3 years before that. And it was a geographical point, usually a tall piece of karst, maybe the Fish's Mouth was one, Magia Pass was one, and I knew what they looked like, and I knew the distance, and I knew the headings to each of them. So if I got to Magia Pass and I wanted to go north to the next one, I knew the heading and the distance. I'm flying at about 2.5 miles per minute. Okay, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Yep, there it is. I see it now. I turn to the new heading.
Very good. So it was all visual flight rules.
Yes, all visual flight rules.
Skyraider.
Yes, all visual, and they were large geographical formations that you would recognize.
Okay. Now, did you ever pull any Prairie fire missions?
No, Prairie fire missions we went to northern Laos at a place called the Plain de Jars. We couldn't bomb on the plane. We couldn't attack, I should say, because it was, we were told we couldn't. But if there were troops in contact around there or supply depots, we could do that.
Plain de Jars, wasn't that kind of a religious area where they said you couldn't bomb?
Big burial site, huge jars. I imagine they're probably 3 or 4 feet in diameter, and they're partially buried. The only reason I could see them is I've seen them in National Geographic.
Okay.
I mean, I couldn't see them from the air.
But you knew where you were.
I knew I knew where the Plain de Jars was, and you don't go there.
I gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So you had mentioned earlier while we were talking that you've flown the A-10. I'm sorry, the A-1. Was the F-107?
No. I started in the back seat of the F-4.
Okay.
Because they put pilots in there up until about 1967. Then I transferred and I went to the front seat of the F-4.
Who were you with when you were flying F-4?
I was in Thailand again. I was with the 8th TAC Fighter Wing. That's Robin Olds' wing.
Okay.
The Wolf Pack, and I got there for about the last 3 or 4 weeks of his tour. I don't believe I ever flew in an attack with him, but he was a really dynamic individual. He could say, we're going to Hanoi and we're going to lose half the force, and guys would be going, yeah, let me go, I'll go, I'm ready. He was a very dynamic person, and I learned from him. Of course, he was a World War II ace.
Now you went from the F-4.
So backseat F-4, front seat F-4, 141 transport, which was unusual, and that's a story we don't need to tell. But
nobody that's a fighter pilot wants to tell about that transport part of their
that's right.
Their relationship.
I flew those for about 2 years and was at what they call Squadron Officer School, and a military personnel guy came in. He said, you don't have absolute control over your career, but you also are not you're not a cork bobbing on the sea. So
how about if we start back with that?
Okay, go ahead.
You're
Sure.
good. You're good.
Okay.
Let's start with.
Let me turn it all the way off.
Yeah, I did the same. We're good.
Sorry.
No. You're good.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the
You said
back seat, front seat
Okay.
transport.
All right. Out of pilot training, I got a backseat F4. I volunteered to go to UBAN because they were the MiG killers. And you're young and you're unable to be killed. You think you're going to live forever, and that's where I flew backseat. I volunteered for another 100 missions, so I went to the front seat upgrade. From that, I flew a little bit, and then I went to 141s, which are transports. Flew all the way around the world, except for a small place. I had never flew over India, but I've flown east and west almost all the way around the world. And a fella at MPC was at our squadron officer school. He says, you can't have absolute control of your career, but you're not a cork bobbing on the water. You should let people know what you want. And I called MPC and I said, hey, Air Force is closing my 141 squadron. You're transferring me to California. You're going to take somebody from California and send him to Vietnam. He probably doesn't want to go to Vietnam. Why don't you just take me and I'll take that slot to Vietnam? And I said, in F4s. And I said, well, we don't have any F4s, but would you take an A-1? I said, sure, I'll take an A-1. And I knew the mission was a good mission, and that's how I got into A-1s. Came back from that. I almost got into A-7s while I was in A-1s because I helped the A-7s come in, and they were taking over the SAR rescue, search and rescue. And I went, and I would be dropped in northern Thailand and pretend I was a survivor so that they could practice their finding me. I did that for about 2 months at the end of my A-1 tour. And they were very successful. I trained a bunch of guys, and they said, how'd you like to have an in-country checkout in the A-7? I'll do that. And then MPC said, well, that'd be his third combat tour. It'd be a consecutive tour. You know, if he is shot down and captured, there are people that haven't been to Vietnam. I think it was a bad decision on the Air Force's part because I was familiar with all of that. Anyway, I eventually got to the A-7, flew that for 3.5 years, had a staff job, and then flew A-10s for 4 years, another staff job, and was very fortunate to be picked up and flew F-16s for my last aircraft.
Now, where were you stationed with that?
I was stationed in Zaragoza, Spain. By that time, I was a colonel, and I was the director of operations, DCO, Deputy Commander of Operations. And when the F-16s and the F-15s and whoever else came in, I owned them while they were on my base.
Okay.
And I ran the gunnery range that we had. It was a very small squad, a very small wing, but I got to fly the F-16, so I didn't care.
Now, I have to ask you about your bracelet. I've seen several guys that are in that 70 to 72.
Okay.
Well,
I'm going to tell you about it, and then you can edit it. We were being shot down pretty regularly. We had 28 aircraft when I arrived. We were down, being shot down pretty regularly, and somebody said, well, you couldn't take a $100 bill and give it to a North Vietnamese or a Arvon troop or someone in Laos and say, let me go. But they love silver and gold. And this is solid sterling silver. And it doesn't have just a gold facing on it. That's gold inlay. So it's very heavy.
Hold that up just a little higher, like right in here.
Yeah.
There we go. Let me see that. Wow. Look at
Okay.
that. So this was your E&E plan.
Well, this was my E&E plan until one night we were at the bar drinking and somebody said, well, what if they just shoot you and steal your bracelet? I said, holy mackerel, that's not very good. That wouldn't be very fun. I'm going to tell you this and you can edit it. So on the back of my bracelet, it says, I had it engraved, if I am laying cold and dead and you are stealing this from my body, fuck you.
That's awesome.
And somebody said, well, why didn't you have it written in North Vietnamese? And I said, they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. But
now, do you want that edited out? Because
no,
that is so good. That is a great spirit to have. I love that.
Well, if you've read Shakespeare, Caesar, he's about to go on the Ides of March to his death, and his wife says, oh, don't go. There's rumors that they're going to assassinate you. And he says, A coward dies 1,000 deaths, but a brave man dies but once.
That is wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about, Mazz?
No, thank you very much. As I said, I got there kind of late. I did make Sandy Low lead, and I did train some guys. I was on 2 search and rescues where we did rescue guys.
Which ones were those? Can you recall?
One was with my good buddy Tex Brown. I flew a lot of missions with him. We were stationed, or we had been moved forward to Da Nang. We would stay there for a week, and an Army helicopter had been shot down. Guys were wounded, one guy had been burned, but it wasn't a clear definition of a front line and a back line. So when we got there, the ground mission commander says, you can come in, but you can't fire back. I don't want any friendlies being killed by you. And on top of that, the Navy was firing over us, so we're trapped about 2,000 feet above the ground, maybe even lower. And we continued that until the Air Force helicopters arrived, and it was the same thing. Well, you Air Force guys just kind of spray around. You can come in and pick up these guys because they couldn't get them out by ground transportation, but you can't fire. And the Air Force helicopter said, if we can't fire, we're not coming in. And now we've been there about 3 hours. It's getting twilight, and a radio call comes in. Hey, we're 6 Army helicopters. We've got 2 Hueys, we've got 2 Loaches, and we've got 2 Cobras, and we'll come in if the commander will allow us fire on fire. In other words, if they receive fire, they can fire back. And they said yes. By this time, it's nighttime. So Tex Brown is overhead. He's holding that position. I went south, and I see the helicopters coming up, and I kind of start leading them in, and I got my lights on, and when I was at about the right position, it's Tex, turn on your rotating beacon, I'll turn on mine, which we did, and then we got a lot of tracers. And I think he took 9 hits, and I took, so these are all small arms hits. I had about 4 hits, and during the daytime, they shot a Strela at us, and I saw it coming up, and I told Tex to brake, and I broke, and it went between us. It's a shoulder-mounted heat-seeking missile, but it missed us. Anyway, we were pretty skosh on fuel by then. We'd been airborne almost 5 hours, so as we're heading back to Da Nang, we landed to the south, and Tex said, well, just take spacing on me rather than take up a lot of time because we were skosh on fuel. And one of the bullets had shot out his tire, and gets carooned on the runway, tells me to go around, and now I'm really skosh on fuel. Now I'm fumes. Anyway, they finally got him off the runway, and I landed, and it was one of the most satisfying missions because we rescued 6 guys that needed to be rescued, and we weren't allowed to fire, but we took a lot of hits, so we spent about 3 hours getting shot at.
Now, when the Army helicopters come in, did they take fire when they were trying to extract?
We got an award for that. Neither of us wrote us up. One day the award showed up. It was the 6 Army guys that we rescued wrote that up and sent in a citation for us.
Now that's got to be quite the compliment.
Yes, it was. It was quite the compliment. That was, as I said, we spent 5 hours and with the missile going between us and trapped and getting hit and everything. It's now almost dark. It was a great mission, a good mission for us.
Did you stay in contact with those gentlemen?
No, we never met them. One day we got an award, and they said go up and they're going to pin an award on you, and that's it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's about it. I hope that's all you need.
Oh no, that is wonderful. So you actually had a shoulder-mounted missile shot at
As a matter of fact, Tex was trying to I don't know if you can edit this. Tex was up, we had seen the NOTAMs, notice to pilots, and they said that they were firing. So it's a big box, it's got a top, a bottom, sides, and you're not supposed to fly in there because the Navy's firing off of ships in there. Well, when we get to our place, it's right over the rescue point. And we orbited for a while, and Tex is trying to contact the Navy and find out how to stop this. And I said, you know, Tex, what's the possibility of me? You stop the firing and I'll fly down and I'll find the guy, which I did. And they laid out they didn't put out a smoke, they laid out an orange panel. So when Tex finally got the Navy barrage shut down, I got him on my wing. I'm here and he's flying formation on me and I'm gonna fly him like this. And I said, okay, look out your left wing. There's that red stripe, you see it? And about that time, I saw the missile come. And I said, break left, Tex. And I broke right, and the missile went between us. And the reason I talk about that is, if you've seen Top Gun, you know, he said, oh, there's a guy behind me. Oh, do something. On my count of 3, break 1, 2, 3. That guy'd be dead by then. You know, you just say, break right now. And the guy breaks, or the guy's, you know, there's no break on my count of 3. What a bunch of baloney. Anyway.
But it's all, yeah, well, that was fantastic.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I really appreciate it.
Now, do you edit this?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Okay, okay. You.
Take 1.
Fast movers in the night means search and rescue.